Well, good afternoon. It is Monday at the end of November here, and I want to jump back in and take on number 44, lesson 44 of the Joshua Code. We are going to get through with this. We're going to get, we only have like 8 or 9 left to go. And so the one today is an interesting verse. It's in John chapter 1:14. But it always has been in my life tied to John chapter 1, verse 1. And that verse says that God became flesh and dwelt among us. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. That's what it says in John chapter 1. But if you drop down to John chapter 1:14, and it says, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory of the only begotten Son of God, full of grace and truth. And so we see these two verses sort of tied together to help us understand that the word that it is talking about is talking about Jesus himself. When he says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Now, some denominations will say that it says, and the Word was a God, but they're trying to divide the divinity from Jesus. They can't understand how he can be Jesus and he can be a God man. And in this situation, O.S. Hawken, he used three things that God, he had a garment when he came in the form of Jesus, and that was the garment of flesh. He took on flesh to dwell among us. He became us in a way. When he came as the little seed implanted by the Holy Spirit into the Virgin Mary, he came and he felt all the things that humans feel. When he grew tired, when he grew hungry, when he grew weary, when he became lonely, when he became discouraged, when he was there, sweating his great drops of blood. All that was the humanity in him. And then, of course, when he fed the 5,000 and he raised the people from the dead and calmed the sea and walked on water, now that was all divinity. He was God-man. He wasn't just flesh and then God at times. He was just God-man. I know it's a weird concept to be able to understand, but he took on flesh so that he would understand everything about it. So every temptation that you ever had, every struggle, every difficulty, he can in some way relate, because he came as flesh and took on the things that we had to deal with. He did it so that we would not have a high priest who doesn't understand, but we would have a high priest who knows and understands what we're going through, and in some way experience that, either through omniscience of it or just the actual experience of it. Not only that, but he had grace in the midst of it. His grace was that he dwelt among us. That's amazing grace. When we think about that, the idea, for instance, hey, if somebody was very influential in our world today, and you needed help in something, let's just say, let's just use the president for example. Let's say you needed help in a local city thing, and it'd be unbelievable for somebody like the president to stop in and help you out, but in his grace, he comes in and helps you out in this situation. That's grace to come and do that, even though he doesn't have to do that. Now, this is just a very minute example, and not a good one, really, of the idea of Jesus coming to dwell among us, to make his tent with us, if you will, to take up temporary residence. And that's what he did with us. He took up temporary residence with mankind. That's grace. When he, the Son of God, leaves his throne in heaven to come and to dwell among us so that he can relate to us, that's his grace. He's full of grace. When they were persecuting him, where they were killing him, he was still following through with obedience to the Father in order to bring about salvation to us. That's grace. Um, he's full of grace. Yes, he's clothed in flesh, but he also had the determination to bring about grace toward us. And then he also had glory when he came. We beheld his glory, that of the only begotten Son of God, full of grace and truth. We catch a glimpse of that glory when he's here on earth, his incarnation, these 33 years that he stayed here incarnate in the flesh. That's what it means. We saw some glimpses in the Bible at the Transfiguration. I can imagine that as John is writing that he is recalling those moments when he saw Jesus transfigured on the Mount of Transfiguration, and beholding the glory of God and seeing that. John couldn't help but to say, man, we beheld his glory. Now, you and I may have felt like that we haven't gotten to see his glory in that way, but we see it through the word as we read it. It's just as real, even though we haven't seen it. It's just as real that it did happen. And, he did show his glory, not only in the Mount of Transfiguration, but on the cross when he died, and then in the grave when he was resurrected, and brought glory to the Father and brought grace to us. And so we see this verse is very meaningful. It's a verse that I've known for quite some time, one of those verses that just kind of stick with you. And instead, that's what it is. John 1:14, and the Word, or Jesus, became flesh and dwelt and lived among us, made his residence here for 33 years, in order that people might behold his glory. We beheld his glory. We saw the glory of God when he was raised from the dead, and when he raised other people from the dead, and when he was on the Mount of Transfiguration, when he did these amazing things, when he healed the sick, made the lame walk, made the blind to see, all those things that he did, brought salvation to the man on the cross who said, look, forgive me. And he's like, this day you'll be with me in paradise. We beheld the glory of God, and it is the glory of the only begotten Son of God. Jesus is the Son of God. He did come to earth in order that we might experience the Father's grace and be able to be reconciled to God, because our sin had separated us from God, and therefore we needed to be reconciled. Jesus was the reconciler. His death on the cross reconciled us to God. Now all we need to do is believe that Jesus is the Son of God, and that he did come to pay the debt that we owed for sin in our own life. We had transgressed against God and against his law, and punishment had to be paid, and it was through Jesus that it was paid. And so it's a good verse. John 1:14. Hope that you can kind of put it in your memory banks. And I know you're not going to be able to hold on to every one of these, most likely. That's 52 scriptures that we should know and study. But some of them will stick and some of them will not stick. Unless we use them every day, they just sort of fade away. But this one has stuck with me for a long time, and I hope it does with you as well. God bless you and have a good day.